Hey guys, so the video you're all about to watch is insane. I'm going to warn you right now. It actually took a whole lot of editing to put together something that I felt like I could actually let people watch. It was done at the spur of the moment. It was not planned out at all. It was just sort of done flow of consciousness, you know, just came out as I went. But I think the topic that I'm discussing is worth hearing out and talking about. So anyway, if you guys hate this video, I'm sorry. Just throw it out of your mind and forget about it because it's not my normal video that I do. I think somebody out there might find some enjoyment with this thing. So anyway, without further ado, here you go. Here's my What is a High-End Knife video.
Hey everybody, we're back.
Cool. Thank you, Aiden, for introducing. All right. So hanging out with Aiden, we're getting some time outside. Wait, we're going to do something a little bit different for this video. I was hanging out at work with a bunch of friends, and we were having a what we call a DV, a distinguished visitor, which means, you know, a really high-ranking person. There we are, waiting for the important person, and I won't name the name, but waiting for the important person to come into our office, our work center, to see what's going on and meet us. And so in order to keep it neat and clean, we were just surfing the internet together. We ended up on Arizona Custom Knives, which is one of my favorite websites, one of my favorite places to buy knives. So it's kind of an unwritten rule that everybody in the military carries a knife with them at all times. And sometimes it's what we consider low-end, sometimes what we consider high-end. And we started getting in a debate, going through all the knives on Arizona, as to what makes a high-end knife a high-end knife. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. We started putting together a list and debating of all the factors that go into low-end versus high-end. You know, the first thing we talked about is it the brand? Are there high-end brands and low-end brands? Are there high-end designers, low-end designers? Is there, you know, production versus custom? Some designers will have custom series knives and also make production series knives with different companies. Is it the handle? Is it the blade materials? Is it the way it's ground or shaped? You know, what is it that we consider to be a high-end knife? And so in this video, I want to go over some stuff. I want to talk about some of the things we discussed in the office. And then I just, you know, want to see what everybody thinks about it. I want to start a little, I won't say a debate, but, you know, just a little discussion. I just have a little assortment of different things to illustrate, you know, what I think, what we talked about, both ends of the spectrum, high-end versus low-end. Before we go into this, it's just a really good example. So I want to show something off. And this is work that I did. So this is, I think, a really nice, colorful anodizing job. It was a basic Strider SMF CC. Okay? Just kind of fresh out of the box with green G10. This is the work that I did on the scale. I also did some really nice work on the blade and the clip. Now, here's the deal. This was a standard Strider SMF. Someone else did some grinding, or had grinding done, I should say. This is not what a mixed Strider custom Nightmare grind looks like, but it's actually a really nice job. So this is, like I said, standard production Strider SMF. And then they wanted me to do some work. I did all this on the blade, which I really like the look of that. I did the clip up in the same style, did the lock side, and then I went ahead and did the anodizing, the gold to purple to blue back to gold, and I think it came out really nice. Now here's the kicker. When I first got my hands on this knife, someone had forged, I don't know if you can see it, the mixed Strider signature on here to combine with that Nightmare grind, or I'd say fake Nightmare grind, to pass it off as a mixed Strider custom. Now it's not. So this originally was what we would consider, I think, a high-end knife. It was the Strider SMF CC. It's not cheap, okay? But they tried to go a step further with it, and I didn't realize the whole counterfeitness of it until I was already done, and I actually refused to give it back to them, and I said, you can't pass this thing off, especially if you're going to put my work into it. So I ended up paying them for the cost of the knife. I mean, I still think it's nice. And I've gotten some offers on it, too. It being a, you know, not a real, it's not a counterfeit Strider, it's just a counterfeit mixed Strider custom. I don't know. So anyway, I've got this sitting here because I think this kind of illustrates a lot of what we're debating. What would make this super high-end versus low-end? A mixed Strider custom original, of course, would be probably 2 or 3 times the price of what this is worth, with a true Nightmare grind, with his hands and custom logo on this thing. I'm actually, by the way, going to grind that fake signature off and finish it like this as well. And then, you know, it'll just be another Strider sitting in there. Let's look at, you know, an unmolested Strider. It's a gunner grip. Cool. Beautiful knife, by the way, from my collection. So is this high-end? Sure it is. Well, here's my new Dwayne Dwyer custom. Obviously, we would put the value of this knife a lot higher than this one. They're both made out of S30V. They're both gunner grip design, both G10 scale side. So, you know, what makes it worth so much more? If this knife didn't have Dwayne Dwyer's signature and his blade steel engraving on there, it probably wouldn't be worth much more than this one. I mean, yeah, it's got the serrations, and that's like always a hand-done thing at Strider. But really, you know, what is it about it that makes it worth so much more to people? I mean, it's that signature right there. It's knowing that he worked on it himself, I guess. I don't know if that was a good intro or not. So as we go through the rest of these knives, we're going to look at some of the features of what we consider high-end knives, and we're going to go through this list that we came up with at work to talk about it. So the first thing is the brands. Let's talk about Benchmade at first. So Benchmade, is that a high-end brand? Some people would say yes, but you know, you compare it to say the cost and value of a Strider, or here's a Curtis F3, okay, or a Hinderer. Compared to that, is it still a high-end brand? Is it a low-end brand? I don't know. When I first started getting into knives, I considered Benchmade really high-end stuff, but that was because I really didn't know the other brands that were out there. So me paying, you know, $100 for, or you know, $200, $300 for a Benchmade, that was as high as it got. Then I got into the real collecting and saw some of the other things. One of these, fair price from just about any retailer, you're looking at about $550 for a Strider SMF with a gunner grip, right? Now, just because the Strider costs more, does it make it any better than a Benchmade? Well, some people would say it's in the construction, it's in the design, it's in the materials. Benchmade, though, owns other brand names, and they put out almost the same products. So let's take a look at this right here. Now, this is long out of production with Benchmade. This is the Pica 2, and this happens to be the drop point version, all right? And this is an HK Pica 2. I don't know if it's still in production or not. It is the Tanto version, obviously. Okay, so what is the big difference? Well, if you see, I don't know if you can see the steel marking on the satin blade. They're both made of 9 CR13 steel, right? They both have the exact same plastic handle, the same lockback. The Benchmade version was a lot more expensive than the HK version, and we attribute that simply to the brand name. Benchmade is considered a better brand name than HK. Benchmade owns them both, put them both out. They just charge a lot more for this one than this one, right? So is the brand really what makes it a higher end knife? I don't know. It's the exact same knife. It really is. The exact same materials, both made in China, neither made in the USA. It's just people are willing to pay more for the Benchmade brand, I guess. Now, even within the same brand name, though, since they packaged the other Pica 2 as an HK knife, let's look at some Griptilians. And we'll talk about materials. 2 identical Benchmade 550s. Now, you can tell these are the old ones because they have the oval hole instead of the circle. 1, the newer version, made out of 154CM. The older version, made out of 440C. Is one of these higher end than the other because one's 440C and one is 154CM? I don't know, because this one's hard to find now. I paid actually a little bit more than this one, which was a limited edition 154CM. But my point is, exact same brand name. We're not rebranding it. We're not giving it a different name. We're just changing the material that it's made of. We tend to think that 440C is an inferior steel. And you know what my opinion is? 440C is actually a pretty good steel. It's not as good at certain things with certain properties as a higher end steel. There I am just throwing that term around, higher end. But there's nothing wrong with 440C. In fact, 440C used to be a damn good steel, just like ATS-34, which was pretty much invented for the knife industry. Once upon a time was a super high-end material. It was the best you could get when it first came out. If you had 2 different steels put aside, you know, 440C and say S30V, put them aside, and then you had a custom knife maker that made a custom knife out of 440C, would that knife be higher end than the production version made of S30V just because it's made by a custom maker, even though we're considering the materials? I don't know. These are just all questions that came up, stuff that, you know, I think bears discussion. So when we talk about materials, there's all sorts of stuff. Here's a Benchmade, and it's an older one. I can't remember. Ooh, that's hot. It's aluminum handle. This one is a Purdue design. It's the Ambush. I can't remember the actual number on this one. I can just barely read it. Let's see, it's a 10,200. AUS 8 is not what we consider one of the top higher end steels, but here is a Benchmade production knife with the Pardue name, made of AUS 8. So would this be a high end knife or not? It's made in Taiwan, not USA, like all the Benchmades are now. So where do we put this on the scale of high end or not? We can see that again with Spyderco. So Spyderco, right? A lot of people would consider Spyderco a high end brand. And here is one of the latest paramilitary 2s with the CTS 204P steel. Okay, Sprint Run. I really like this one, by the way. I really like that steel. It's good. I don't have a whole lot of room to put it down. But in the same family, here is a Tenacious. It's made in China, 8CR13 steel. So high-end brand, right, Spyderco, but here's the Spyderco made out of materials that we typically associate with lower-end knives, that 8CR13 steel made in China. So again, are we looking at the brand Spyderco as a high-end brand, or are we looking at the actual individual knife? Is this a higher-end knife than this? A lot of people would say, yeah, the PM2 is a higher-end knife than the Tenacious. So let's compare two things that I think are pretty similar, actually. All right. So we've got the Curtis F3 and we've got the Spyderco Southern. Similar size, shape, weight. Both of them, these have a liner and then a titanium frame lock. They even have their their stops in the same position. It's not the exact same way. This uses the metal from the pivot. This uses an insert, but very similar design. To me, in the weight, the feel, the sound, very similar knives. This is going to run you a lot more than this one. Why is that? Is that the name? The steels that they're using on these are both very good, right? The Carpenter steel, CTS 204. This is, I believe, all of his blades for the F3 series are N680, which is like a really good corrosion-resistant steel. You know, you can talk about the different way they're ground and the shape and everything, but what is the big difference between these two knives that makes this one around, I don't know, $200 to $300, and this one, depending on the options you get, you know, $500 to $700. I wish I had the full titanium scale and titanium backspacer, but that would make this way more expensive, even more still. Looking at some of the different materials, some of the different brand names, now let's talk about designer names. So here is a Rick Hinderer XM18 3.5 inch. Here is a Gerber Hinderer collaboration, the rescue knife. Now, if you remember, or if you look back at my old videos, I did a video comparing the XM18 3.5 to this Gerber knife a long time ago. And so in a lot of ways, the Hinderer is, of course, superior. The Gerber, though, comes with a window punch and a safety hook cutter, you know, for seatbelts and ropes and stuff like that. But again, they're both production knives. We just consider to be one a lot better, even though they're both designed by the same person. So here's my question. If this knife, designed by Hinderer, was made by Hinderer rather than Gerber, let's say it had all the same features, all the same materials, would we then consider it a higher-end knife than what it is now? Would it be in the higher-end knife series? I don't consider Gerber to be a high-end brand. To be honest, I'm not a fan of most of their stuff. I think it's overpriced, and I'm not happy with a lot of the materials they use. But, you know, if we just switch the production line to the Hinderer factory, would this Gerber then be higher-end? Who knows? Let's take a look at some Meyerco knives, which, based on price, would not be very high-end. These knives don't go for more than $20 or $30 each, right? But this is a Meyerco production of a Kirby Lambert design. And it's not bad materials. I mean, it's carbon fiber bolsters with Contour G10 scales over some pretty solid steel liners. The steel is, I don't know what it's made of, to tell you the truth. It's made in China, we know that. But this comes from a well-known, well-respected designer. His knives sell for hundreds of dollars a piece. Meyerco just bought the rights to turn these out with some pretty decent materials. But of course, Meyerco, low-end knife company. Here's a Meyerco Jeff Hall design. Has a really nice spring assist on it. Once again, carbon fiber, textured G10 over steel, which is very similar to a knife that Jeff Hall himself would make. Jeff Hall, one of my favorite designers, by the way. But again, has his name on it, still a low-end knife. I want you to take a look at this. It's a very small knife. Okay, obviously it's a blue and black G10. Okay, friction folder, not my favorite, but I really like this one. JD Deventer design. Okay, comes with a certificate of, you know, authenticity and everything. kind of hand ground blade there. You can see it's really nice. It's a little small for my taste, but pretty expensive knife. Considered high-end or not, I don't know. It doesn't have a lot of the features and a lot of the fanciness that some other high-end knives do, but this is a hell of a good knife. I gotta tell you, I really like it. And again, I'll put in what the blade steel is and everything. I can't remember off the top of my head. So high-end or low-end? Or medium? You tell me. I don't know. Do we have a medium-end knife? Who knows? Let's take a look at this right here. This is a Tac Force knife, which, okay, I'm going to call this a BX special. So for those of you who aren't up on your military terms, BX is the store we have on base where we can go and buy stuff. I want to clear something up too, in case anybody's confused. I've seen some places where people assume that everything in the BX is free. It is not. We have to pay for it. It's just a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier than going out to, say, Walmart for us. You know, it's right there on base and everything. We don't have to pay sales tax. That's the big thing. It's on federal property. There's no state sales tax. But they get these vendors, they get licenses to come into the BX and sell stuff. And on every BX, I swear, there is a knife vendor who sells grossly overpriced, shitty knives to young troops who don't know any better. I call them the BX special. This was one of my troops' knives, and I went and was very gracious and traded him a Benchmade, a Griptilian, for this knife, because I wanted him to have something decent. But this is the BX special. This is what I would consider a very low-end knife. But, you know, if you think about it, let's take a look there. So it has a spring assist, which some higher-end knives do. Benchmade loves to use spring assist of different kinds. It's a liner lock design, so no sludge there. A lot of people point at this cheap Realtree camo scale and what the hell, but what a lot of people don't remember is that Benchmade, once upon a time, had a limited edition Griptilian that came out, and its big selling point was it was Realtree camo on the scales. So what makes this so different? Yes, this steel is not very cool, but you know, that old Benchmade was a 440C blade. If you compare it to one of those older Benchmades, not a whole lot different. I hate the BX special knives though. That poor kid paid 50 bucks for this knife, and I think anybody that knows what they're talking about would say $50 for this thing? Are you kidding me? But they get taken advantage of because they don't know any better, and then they think they have a really cool knife. You know, the final thing that we were discussing is, forget the blades and all that other stuff, but the materials that it's made of. So, carbon fiber versus plain G10 versus something like Keraynite versus some specialty materials. Fly Eye carbon fiber or the new LS2 that I got from Composite Craft. Does that go into deciding whether or not a knife is high-end or low-end? Because the truth is, in the end, my final theory is, I think that there are some knives that some people won't carry or won't give it their due attention because they don't think it's a higher-end knife or a good enough knife. I think that there are a lot of different ways to look at high-end versus low-end and how we rack and stack these things. Anyway, I hope that one or two of you out there sort of found some value in this video and enjoyed it. I hope that a lot of you will join in the discussion and put your comments down there and we can talk about it. Otherwise, I'll be back again soon with my normal videos, custom work, test videos, mini reviews, some giveaways down the line, like I said. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys, as always, for watching, and I'll be back again real soon.